Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. I want to talk a little bit today about bug out locations. I want to give a little refresher for those of us, well, most of us, the information I'm about to give and talk about. Most of us in the community, we already know all this stuff. But it's good to get a little refresher once in a while and keep our minds fresh and considering, all the things that you have to consider when shit hits the fan. And also maybe some advice to put out there to help new preppers and survivalists, help them out a little bit. So when you're choosing a bug out location, right, I think the number one mistake most people make is they let too many people know about their bug out location. The location that you're going to bug out to should be kept confidential. Can't even speak today. Confidential information amongst the handful of people that you would either be bugging out with or meeting up with at the bug out location. Too many people tell way too many others about where their bug out location is. Now, with that being said, your bug out, your group that you're going to be meeting up with, the people that know your bug out location, they should be limited to close friends and family. That's what your group should be comprised of. That's always been my opinion. You might think differently. You might say the more the merrier. I don't agree with that philosophy. The problem with too many people knowing your bug out location, I don't care how well you think you trust them, but you start getting over 10, 15 people, which to me is the max, and even to me, I think 10, 15 people is a little much for a group. And the reason I think that is you got too many people that are vying for that top dog leadership position. There's going to be a constant power struggle when things start getting really tense, especially over the long term. The more people you have, the more medical supplies you need, the more food you have, the more mouths there are to feed, all that stuff. The more supplies and stuff you will go through quicker, and it's going to be harder to replenish. And also, if you have 30, 40 people that know where your location is, they know what you have. Times get tough, and historically when times get tough and people get desperate, good people will do bad things. So you might know somebody that your neighbor a couple houses down, that he's into prepping and survival, and he might be a great neighbor, a great guy, you guys have a lot in common. That's great. Next thing you know, his family's starving. He's coming for your shit because his family's starving. And I'm not saying I blame the person. I'm saying that that's what happens, and you got to protect your own. So that's some things, really important things to consider. Close friends, close family. There's nothing wrong with having a large network of people, don't get me wrong, that you communicate with. You don't need to tell them everything about your plans. You don't need to tell them everything about what supplies you have, which I'll get to that in a minute. But it's okay to have a decent-sized network of people that you can learn from. I say all the time on this channel, guys, we all here to teach and learn and grow from each other, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. And also it doesn't hurt if you have a friend in another state that might open his doors to you and your family just in case. So that's good. I have what I would call brothers and sisters in other states that I wholeheartedly trust with my life. And those of you watching this, I know you guys watch this. I'm not going to say who you are. You know who you are. I would trust you guys in my life. You guys can trust me with yours. You know who you are. So, I keep my group pretty small. My group does expand to other states besides my own at the moment, as well as besides where my bug out location is. Next thing I really want to bring up is when you're discussing, it's very easy when you're talking amongst other preppers. This goes for any time you talk to anybody with similar interests as yourself, you can get lost in conversation fast. Especially when it comes to prepping and survival. There's no need to tell everybody how much ammunition you have. Nobody needs to know that you have 2,000 rounds of 30-06 and 4,000 rounds of 223 and 50,000 12-gauge slugs. Nobody needs to know that stuff. Nobody needs to know how much food you have. It's okay to talk with others about how to prepping ideas. You can discuss kind of what you prep and what you have. You can say, hey, I stock this kind of food or that kind of food or this kind of animal, but nobody needs to know how much you stock. Nobody needs to know the way where you keep it. It's okay to discuss, different ways of prepping, of storing these things. That's how we all learn, is through knowledge, right? It's through teaching each other and learning from each other. But it's very important, people, that you keep the amount of what you have somewhat secretive, because the person like I said, the person you might know down the block, you might come for your food. It's possible. Another thing that's really important, which I don't hear discussed enough, is if you have to bug out, and I say if you have to bug out, I'm not going to go into a big thing about my views on bugging in versus bugging out, but I'll sum it up quick. You guys heard me say this many times in many videos. You should not bug out unless absolutely necessary. That's my opinion. That's how I look at it. Because when you bug out and you leave your home, you're leaving security, shelter, food, water, supplies, comfort. You're leaving a lot behind. You don't bug out unless necessary. And please have a bug out location. Have some place to go. Because if you don't bug out with some place to go, you're pretty much roaming around homeless at that point. You're not bugging out. You're just driving around homeless. So try to have a location to go. Even if you can't afford to buy a secondary location, there's always, like I said, you grow a little network of close friends and family. Have someplace else where you can go. But only if necessary should you leave all that behind. But in the event you do, don't just know one route to your bug out location. Know several. Several routes. There might be an issue come up and you can't get out that one way. Roads might be blocked. It could be chaos, whatever. You can't get out that way. So you should have several ways to get out. As many ways as you can have planned. I don't want to say you have to have 20 routes planned, but a good 5, 6, 7 routes, ways. If you live in a place you can only get out 2 or 3 ways, that's fine, but know those 2 or 3 routes out. Also, when you pick a bug out location, it should be somewhat isolated off the beaten path if possible. We all live in different areas. You might live in the city areas. You might live, whatever. So, you should at least live somewhat inconspicuous where you pick a bug out location. And something that's important that I never hear anybody talk about this, is that when you're bugging out and you're on your route to your bug out location, if you got a long haul ahead of you, you got a 15, 16 hour drive or more, know where you would stop if you had to stop along the way. I'm not saying you will have to, but it's good to know a stopping point. God forbid you have to pull over, especially if you got a family and kids. You don't want to be pulling over if shit's going crazy and wild and people are out to get each other at the neighborhood rest stop. You need to know a location and have that spot or spots planned out and mapped out ahead of time. Have that mapped out on your route. In case you have to stop, you know where you could stop. And know where your fueling stations are, your gas stations. Know where that stuff is. Getting to knowing where that stuff is when you pick out a bug out location. Even if it's just a friend's or family's house, or if it's a spot that you purchased, a piece of land or a house somewhere that you purchased in the middle of nowhere, know the surrounding towns, know the routes in and out of your bug out location. It's very important. Don't just buy one and say this is great, but then, hey, where am I going to go to get gas? Where am I going to get supplies? It's good to know that stuff. And bugging out, your area where you live might be compromised, but where your bug out location might not be compromised. Things might not have gotten that bad yet, and you might still be able to get supplies and food and gas. So it's good to know where those things are and the proximity they are to around you and different ways of getting to those spots. Very important. So, also, just like I said before, the supplies that you keep in your homestead, you should keep the supplies you keep in your bug out location somewhat on the DL. And I think that covers most of it that I want to get to, that I want to talk about in this video. This is just a little refresher. Some of the stuff you guys have heard a million times before, but like I say, it's always good to keep these things refreshed in the back of your mind. And I hope everybody, like I said, had a good weekend. I hope everybody has a good rest of the week. Hopefully this is a good refresh, like I said. Maybe it helps some new preppers out there that are new to the channel. You know, while you're watching this, maybe scroll through my other channels. Check out some of the other channels on here. They're all great people. You can learn a lot of stuff from them. You know, from my featured channels to the people that I'm subscribed to. I'm pretty much subscribed to. Everybody I talk to and subscribe to, they're all great men and women, great people to talk to and learn from. So that's it, everybody. God bless. God bless the United States, the men and women who protect our country and our rights. Stand your ground for our Second Amendment rights. They're under attack. I say this in almost every video because I want to remind everybody to do so. And that's it. I love you all. Stay safe, stay strong. It's a jungle out there. You gotta watch your backs, protect yourselves and your families. All right, everybody, take care.